Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing? Today I want to talk about the 10 indie eyeshadow palettes I would keep if I could only have 10 in my entire collection. This video idea was started by Annette's Makeup Corner, I believe last year, and I did this video last year and shared the 10 palettes that I would keep, the top of my list, the ones I couldn't live without. And I had a comment the other day that was actually asking me to do an updated version, and I thought that was a wonderful idea because my makeup style has changed a bit. I've tried some amazing new palettes, and it's pretty funny because most of the palettes that were in my original video are not in my list now, which I wasn't expecting. There is a tiny bit of overlap, but overall, these are different palettes, and I think they're all amazing. So if you want to hear my picks, let's just go ahead and jump on in. So these 10 palettes are not in any particular order, but I'm just going to go ahead and start off with the Sydney Grace Enduring Love palette. This is one of my favorites, and I feel like it is just such a perfect neutral but still fun palette. So I have the light version, but they do have a deep version as well. And here is what it looks like. If you look closely, you can see that I hit pan in Romeo, which I'm very excited about. But I just absolutely love this palette. I feel like there's so many great transition shades. I feel like the shimmers, the metallics are just super intense. So if I could only keep 10 palettes in my collection, I feel like this one would fill the space of being my go-to neutral palette and giving me this like smoky eyes, but I could also go rosy, and you know, I just feel like I have a lot here, and I know that I reach for this palette all the time. Even if this was like a top 5 list, this palette would still make it. All right, so following along, another neutral palette that I really love that's technically independently owned is going to be the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. I chose this one because, for one, packaging is stunning, the formula is amazing, and I love the color choices. I feel like these would be very staple for a small collection. So the reason I love this palette is because of the cool tones mostly, like the entire bottom row, and then the shades here. Like, this is the best silver in an eyeshadow palette. It's just perfection. And then I feel like also I didn't choose a palette that had like a ton of warm tones, but this does have some warm tone options if I was ever feeling that. So I just thought it was a really great addition to my 10 palettes. And like I said, I just really love the formula of this one. I feel like everything blends like a dream. So yeah, I think I wasn't expecting it because I really love the Moonspell palette, but this is my favorite from Lunar Beauty. And then the last neutral palette that I would keep if I could only have 10 palettes would definitely be the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I've talked about this so many times. I just love this. It's my go-to for those like mustardy, grungy neutrals, and then of course there's like the beautiful pops of like bluey green going on, which I love. I feel like this is just the best Natasha Denona palette, and again, if this was a top 5 list, this one would be in it because it's just perfection. I feel like the shimmers are so beautiful, and I just absolutely love this palette. I don't want to go on and on because, like I said, I know I've talked about that in excess. So another one that I just knew as soon as I was like putting this together, I looked at this palette and I was like, there's no way that I couldn't choose this one, is going to be the Kaledios times Angelica Nyqvist Club Nebula palette. This is just perfection, the perfect colorful palette. I feel like it adds so much to my collection. I love the mattes that were chosen in here, especially like this whole corner right here is just everything to me. I reach for the deep green and blue and the red and the purple all the time. I just feel like they complete so many other palettes. So I knew that this was one I wanted to keep. And then it also has like a little pop of warmth, which again, I don't have a full warm palette. So I feel like with the palettes that I chose for my top 10 list, I would still be able to like get a little bit from each if I needed to. I was just trying to think like realistically, like what I would give me like a full complete collection where I could do any type of look that I wanted. So yes, Club Nebula, so good. I'm so sad that's not available anymore, but it's a favorite. I don't want to not mention it. All right, next from Menagerie, I chose the Flight Club palette. I know I haven't talked about this a ton on my channel, but I just felt like I needed some more pops of purple, and I really like this. Like, I feel like it's such a pretty monochromatic purple palette. I like that it's more pinky, like burgundy type of purples rather than like cool toned blue-based purples, I definitely prefer to reach for this more. And I do have this palette on my eyes today, along with another one that I'll mention in a few moments, but I just think that this is really nice. The mattes are really, really great. This is like one of the best formulated palettes that Menage has done so far, so that's another reason why I chose it out of all the purple palettes that I could have chosen. I just feel like I really like the shades. I feel like I'm lacking a very deep purple, but I have that in the Club Nebula palette. I feel like the shimmers in here are decent. They're not too chunky. And then for Menagerie, I also chose the Whale Song palette, which I think that this was in the original video that I did. And I just love this. I feel like it has the most perfect blue and green tones. You can see I've got dips going in several shades. I just felt like I needed a few more pops of blue and green in my list as well. And I feel like this palette covers that perfectly. It is a very intense formula. It does stain the eyes. It's a little bit more kick-uppy, but I feel like the shades in here are just so beautiful. It's worth it, so had to include that one. And then the other palette that I have on my eyes today is the Sydney Grace Tiny Marvels palette. This was their collaboration with Mel Thompson. I really, really love this one, and it's continued to be a favorite. I just feel like it's kind of like half neutral, half colorful, but the colors are more like pops of pastels. Again, I love the metallic formula from Sydney Grace. This shade Fire Butts is one of my absolute favorites, so I just felt like this was a good one to include. Again, some more just fun pops. Gives me a little bit of pastel because I don't really have that a ton in the other palettes that I chose, and I just feel like the formula is amazing. So yeah, I don't know, every time I do a look with this, I still continue to love it. Next, I definitely had to include the Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane palette. I just love this palette, love this formula. The absolute prettiest, most sparkly metallic shades to put all over the lid. So many duochromes, borderline multi-chromes. I just feel like this would pop with any other palette that I'd chosen, and some of the ones that are really matte heavy. I just think that this palette is the perfect companion if you love these kind of intense sparkly shades, which I do. So yeah, this is my favorite of all the Adept palettes between Codain and Ninhydrin. I just feel like the original Plain Jane is my favorite color story, and I had to keep this in my top 10. I'm not sure if this is still available anymore or not. I'll have a link down below if it is, but if not, I would switch it out for the It's Belle Break My Rules palette because the formula is similar. I like the Adept a little bit more, and there's more shades in here, and I just like they're not exactly the same. I have a whole video comparing them, but that would be my alternative. And then lastly, these two palettes, I'm kind of mentioning them together because they go together. That's going to be the Melt Cosmetics Vida and Muerte palettes. They're just so good. I'm so happy that I have them in my collection. I left them towards the end because I know it sucks. I know that they're not available anymore and they were too limited edition, but I just had to include them in my top 10 list. So Vida, again, I feel like it has like some really good pops of like super bright warm tones, but the bottom, or like this half of the palette, is just everything. I love those kind of olivey, neutral, the pops of bright green, like those tones I just love. And then the Muerte palette I just feel like stands out. It speaks for itself. The shades in here are just like the most beautiful, grungy, but still colorful between the blue, the green, and the red. I could do without this shade right here, but everything else is just perfection. So I had to go ahead and include those to complete my top 10 list. But I wanted to throw in a bonus because that's kind of like my top 10, especially for like the style of makeup that I'm feeling right now and just what I've been gravitating towards. I realized as I was going through it, I'm like, yeah, I have pops of this here and there, but I don't have a true rainbow palette. So I feel like today I could live without that, but who knows, maybe next week I would be like, oh, I wish I had a true rainbow palette in my top 10. So I just wanted to throw in an honorary mention, and that is gonna be the Glam Like Cake palette. I was just thinking of all the rainbow palettes that I have, and still, if I had to choose just one, I really love the formula of the metallics, and I feel like I just basically have an entire rainbow of matte, super bright, bold shades. If I was needing it, then that would be my 11th palette. I don't know, I just wanted to throw that in at the end. Maybe I was overthinking it a little bit, but I was trying to like actually like break it down and be serious about it. So I would love to know if any of those palettes would make it in your top 10, or what your top 10 palettes would be if you could only keep 10, or maybe you have less than 10 palettes and you could let me know what they are. I'd be curious to hear, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.